During the Roaring Twenties, the United States was a land of prosperity and excess. Businesses flourished, production soared, and the stock market boomed. But while business owners and stock traders became rich and enjoyed the best the country had to offer, most workers were struggling to survive. The gap between the rich and the poor widened. And as factories churned out more and more goods, fewer and fewer Americans could afford to buy them. By the late 1920s, the U.S. economy was in shambles. Overproduction had caused prices and wages to drop, and many people went into debt. In October of 1929, the stock market that had made many people rich crashed. Stock prices plunged and many investors lost fortunes. Soon after, many banks failed, wiping out the savings of ordinary people. Factories shut down and millions lost their jobs. This economic collapse is called the Great Depression, which began in 1929 and lasted into the early 1940s. At the height of the Great Depression, about 13 million people were out of work, about 1 out of every 4 workers in the country. The unemployed and hungry relied on handouts of food and clothing given by private charities. Those workers who managed to keep their jobs often had to choose between taking huge pay cuts or facing unemployment themselves. People tried anything to get money to feed their families, including trading away their prized possessions or selling apples or pencils on street corners. Among the hardest hit were the poor farmers of the southern Great Plains. Droughts, crop failures, and bad farming techniques led to years of choking dust storms in the region, which came to be called the Dust Bowl. The storms forced many Dust Bowl residents to abandon their farms and migrate to other parts of the country in search of work. African Americans, Mexican immigrants, and women were also hard hit by the Depression. When employers laid off workers, these people were often the first to go. Many Americans blame President Herbert Hoover for their troubles. So when New York's Governor Franklin D. Roosevelt ran against Hoover in 1932, he was elected president in a landslide. Roosevelt, nicknamed FDR, promised a New Deal for the American people.
First of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
With those words, FDR sprang into action during the first 100 days of his presidency, signing a record 15 bills into law. FDR's New Deal aimed at rebuilding the economy, helping the jobless, and preventing future depressions. Roosevelt temporarily closed the banks and restructured government banking regulations. He granted government funds to struggling industries and relief agencies. Millions of workers were employed in new public works and conservation programs, building or repairing structures and public areas across the nation, and improving America's national parks. New regulations were enacted to limit unfair business practices and promote the rights of workers to organize and form unions. And new government programs such as Social Security and federal unemployment insurance were set up to give Americans what FDR called freedom from want. Though Roosevelt's New Deal programs helped millions of Americans, millions more remained unemployed. Droughts continued to plague the farmers of the Dust Bowl, and the Great Depression rolled on until the early 1940s. But FDR's New Deal helped reduce the suffering caused by the Depression, restored many Americans' faith in the government, and helped create a government that took an active role in maintaining the welfare of its people.